was more of a hugging, kissing, loving and nurturant rather than romantic feeling. I don't mean anal intercourse, I was never into that. And I still don't have any interest in that kind of sexual activity. I can't speak for every person who is attracted to children when I say this, but I think a lot of us are quite like that. Well, I tried and tried very, very hard to be a normal person. The thing that I really wanted most of all was to be a parent and have kids of my own. I wanted a nice family, just as I'd grown up in a nice family. I had good parents, very loving parents, and I don't have any excuse to be the kind of person that I am. And my attraction to children came out of nowhere. I can't see any particular obvious source for why I should be the way that I am. So in my early 20s, I tried dating girls and going out with them, and relationships never lasted very long, even though I did get engaged to be married while I was at university. She was a very nice girl. Didn't work out because I felt always this great difficulty in physical proximity. I found it very, very difficult to simply put my arm around her shoulder and to kiss her and to want to do it. I didn't want to do it. I felt I could perform in bed. I actually had sex with my fiancée, but it was a performance and it was extremely stressful. I just couldn't go through with the relationship, and I thought it would be unfair to her. I thought, should I say something about my feelings towards kids? And ultimately I decided that I would have to, and that I would have to call off the relationship as a result. She was upset, but she was pleased to be told. But I don't want to live my life as a lie. I never did deceive anybody in that respect. And I'm glad that I didn't. Well, I pretty much gave up on the idea of an ordinary marriage relationship, and I felt in my early 20s that I would simply have to take the wolf to my bosom, as it were, like the Stoics of old or the Spartans of old, and simply abstain from any form of sexual engagement with anybody forever. It wasn't a question of, can you form a relationship with a man, because I wasn't really gay. My attraction was to boys, but only to boys up to the age of puberty. After that, I could conceive perfectly well that I could be a good friend to a boy I'd earlier had sexual contact with. Wouldn't be a matter of, as some people say, well, you must dump them then. After you've had your wicked way, you will dump them. I've never seen it that way at all. However, what I've subsequently discovered is that there are many, many occasions when an adult will have a relationship with a boy, which will include a sort of pedagogic element, if you like, which will include a nurturant and learning relationship, which people will, if they're destined to be heterosexual, will grow out of naturally. When boys hit their teens, they become interested in forming social relationships with girls anyway, mostly. And then if the relationship has been good, they will look back on it with fondness and say that it has contributed something to their lives. I'll give one particular example of that. There's a guy called Heinz Kohut, and he was a guy in Austria and has gone on the record, and this is one problem that all too few people do go on the record, as talking about his relationship with his tutor. At the time, he had a private tutor who would take him to museums and they would do things together. They would play chess together, as well as a sexual relationship when this boy was about 11, 12, 13, something like that. And he said in his memoir that this relationship saved his life, because at that time his parents were going through a messy divorce. He was having tremendous difficulties at home. He felt somewhat marginalised by the whole of their relationship and the way it was going. And the one rock that he'd got in his life at that difficult time was with this tutor. And he's written and actually said, "This saved my life." And there are a number of people who can look back and say that. We just don't hear these stories. This is the narrative that never gets told. That is, somebody growing up as heterosexual didn't make them into a pervert or anything like that. It wasn't a case of the abuser going on to be abused. This guy actually grew up and had a marriage of his own and became Heinz Kohut became a famous psychoanalyst in the United States. At that time, I felt very, very strongly that this was something in conflict with human dignity, because I felt that I have a sexual orientation. I felt that this was what some people might call God-given, but it was certainly nature-given. It was something that I'd never asked for. But I felt that my attraction, including the sexual elements of that attraction, were not a bad thing. I felt that they drew me towards kids in a way that was loving. And to try to undergo a course which would take this away, I saw it as a bit like neutering a dog or something. And I didn't see it as a cure. I saw it more like castration. And I thought it was inappropriate to use a word which is much used these days. And so I said, well, gentlemen, you've been very kind to me. You're offering me the chance to continue if I undertake this course. But I'm sorry, I cannot do it. And the reason I can't do it is because I don't think it's the right thing to do. I said, it may cost me my job, because you have your job to do as well, keeping kids safe the way you conceive it. But I have to be true to myself, and I can't do this thing. And so I said, I'm not going to resign. I don't think you should sack me. I also don't think I should undergo this course of psychiatry. So you must do what you must do, just as I must do what I must do. And I said, if that's the parting of the ways, well, so be it. I can do no other. Here I stand. I started to get educated about these matters. But then once I understood that my sexual orientation is different, I had to try to understand and come to grips with that and to find a way of living in the world. And how should that be? I needed to be guided by something. When I was at the Open University, working as a press officer in the 70s, I did find some sort of support and exchange of thoughts with a feminist group, and a certain Marceli Cameron, who was a lady editor at the Open University, who was a lesbian, and she invited me to talk to a local group, and I got to know some gay people that way. And they told me about Pi in the mid-70s. And so I joined Pi, and it was at that stage when I met the guy who was effectively the founder of Pi, a young chap, very bright man who'd been active in the gay movement called Keith Hose.